No, no, don't pause. You. Oh no. Yeah. Okay, whatever. That'll be a fun start to the. All right. What was your homework for this week? And by homework, I mean it was literally you're not being tested on it or anything, but I asked you all to think about something for 5 minutes before you came here today. And if you forgot, that's all right, but try to remember. Does anyone remember what my question at the end of last class was?
Self-driving.
No, not the self-driving. That was actually, well, I did say that, but then I ended up changing my mind because, well, but there was some general thing I wanted you all thinking about. Anyone remember? Yeah, well.
How is cybertech impacting or making it worse or easier our democracy?
Yeah, it was just basically, last time we talked about, we ended class with Poli-Sci 101, which was like, what are governments? Why do we have them? How can we do it? And then I said, but this is a cyber-tech class, so what we want to talk about now is how democracy and how government is affected by cyber technology. And in particular, we want to ask questions about, like, in what ways has democracy been improved by cyber tech? In what ways has it been harmed? In what ways has it just been changed? And it can be things like logistics of voting. It can be things like how people make their decisions. It's about who's got power. And a lot of these things are what we talked about over the course of the semester. And there's no real rhyme or reason to what order we want to go in. Basically, I just want to open it up in terms of, like, think about democracy and think about what we like about it and why we value it as a society. Think about what works well in America's democracy, what works poorly, and think about how cyber tech fits in with all of that. So what are just, like, some things in which cyber technology has affected democracy, or even just modern technology in general?
The polling.
Yeah, so one thing we have is polling. So which part of, so I guess there's two aspects to polling. One is once you go to the polls the day of and actually vote, there's an effect. And two, before any election happens, what is the news cycle the entire year leading up to an election?
Is it campaigns?
Yeah, it's campaigns. It's who's doing well. How well are they doing? Like right now, what's the main news story? We've got the impeachment on the one side, but what's the other main American political news story? Make America great again. So that's one side. Is already Trump on the campaign trail trying to convince people to vote for him? And what's the main thing going on with the other party? Okay. Yeah, so schism. So we've got the Republicans we've got Trump, and what is the other main party in America? The Democrats. And what are they up to right now? What are they trying to decide what to do? They're debating. Who's debating? Candidates. Right now there are like 5 or 6 people. People keep dropping out, and I don't know what number we're at, but it was originally like 20 different people were trying to decide who the Democratic Party would vote to go up against Trump in a general election. So right now, all the Democratic candidates are debating with each other, getting fundraising, convincing each other, like, I should be the person to represent the Democratic Party when it becomes time to go against Trump. And so it starts off with all these people debating and getting, like, agreeing or disagreeing on certain issues, talking about how they would be a better person to go up against Trump. And then I never remember exactly when it starts, then different people in different states start voting for who they think, the Democrats in different states vote on who they think the Democratic candidate should be. And over time, somebody will get picked. So like last election cycle, it ended up that Hillary Clinton was voted by the members of the Democratic Party to be the candidate. Same thing going on right now, it's just it's much more complicated. So that right now, and then what's going on if you like read a news cycle, what is it that people are looking at? What is it that, because nobody's decided who the Democratic candidate's going to be yet, and yet already like 15 people have, or 14 people, 12 people have gone, you know what, I'm dropping out, don't count me a part of it. Even though no votes have been cast on anything. So what is it that is causing people to be like Beto O'Rourke was just like, I'm done, I'm not going to do this anymore. What were the reasons that he decided to not stick around? Anyone know? Yeah, statistics, specifically 2 main things. Anyone guess what they are? 2 main things that said Beto O'Rourke doesn't stand a chance. He should drop out now and stop wasting everyone's time. Pardon? So we haven't actually had any primaries yet, so he hasn't actually lost any votes. But before there's ever an election, what do most news stories spend a long time talking about? Well, they just ask a bunch of people, what do you, wait, you
Like,
need-
what are your opinions?
Yeah,
And
so-
at the same time, like, during the voting session, like, there will be, like, margins of, like, one candidate with another candidate, like, in terms of, like, the margin of error.
Yeah, so basically before anyone ever votes,
Yeah.
a lot of people get asked, who are you gonna vote for? Or what are you thinking about voting? Or what matters to you? And these are polls in the sense of just like you ask, like right now, I could ask you all like, we could run polls right now in this class about all sorts of things, like how many of you like Christmas or Hanukkah or any other holiday celebrated in December more than you like Thanksgiving. That's a poll.
Winter holidays.
Yeah. Do you like winter holidays or Thanksgiving better? That's the sort of thing we could run. Now, if you were all a bunch of voters in the Democratic Party, I could ask you all, who do you think you're going to vote for? And if any of you, like if half of you said one person, a quarter said another, and a quarter said another, and nobody at all said Beto O'Rourke, then Beto O'Rourke knows he's got no chance, which is what happened. That's why he dropped out. And the other main thing is what? What drives everything? What rules everything around me? Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. Cash. Cash money rules
Or
everything
currency,
around me. So that is the other big thing that affects it. Beto O'Rourke was not getting nearly as much in donations as people like Bernie or Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden. I can never remember his name. Buttigieg, something like that. Yeah. So in both of these ways, these are how we go about deciding who's going to be the candidate for a party. And cyber technology has affected both of these things, campaign fundraising and also polling and affecting who you're voting for. So what are the fundamental differences? What ways have polling and campaign running in general and campaign finance been changed by cyber tech? No.
They could like data mine.
Yeah, so one thing you can do is data mining plays a huge role in this. So, if you are getting information about people and what they might vote for, now political organizations can mine that data to find out useful information for their candidate.
But like differently though, because like before technology, data mining was probably possible. They probably did it, but they probably couldn't monitor it or make, you know, computerized inferences.
Exactly. So, for instance, what are some, if you're a candidate, what's the number one thing you want to know?
How many people are?
Who's going to vote for you?
Followers.
And most importantly, who's thinking about but isn't yet sure they're going to vote for you? Because those are the people who are going to win you the election. I think I put this diagram up earlier in the semester, but you can think about it as basically, in America, and these numbers are kind of random, but you can think of it, let's just like assume it's something like this. You've got 40% of people who are going to vote Democrat every election until they die, no matter what happens. And you've got about 40%, maybe it's lower, of people who are going to vote Republican until they die. No matter, and these, like, if Donald Trump walked on the street and shot someone in the face on camera, there are still people who'd vote for him. If Hillary Clinton had actually been running a child prostitution ring out of the basement of a pizza parlor, there are still some people who'd vote for her. What matters for the election is these 20% of people in the middle who haven't decided yet. These are the people who are going to take you from 40 to 51. Because to win, you need 51% in each state. Now, it's more complicated because America, we have this stupid electoral system, yada, yada, yada. But basically, these are the people you care about. So, number one step in convincing them of what's going to happen is what? What do you have to do before you can convince these people of anything?
To go and vote?
Well, yeah, so one, you have to get them to vote, but what's the step even before that?
To figure out what you can convince them.
Even before you convince them of anything.
You need to identify who they are.
Yeah, you need to find out who these people are.
Exactly.
If I misidentify who's in this 20%, like why would it be a dumb idea for whoever the Democratic candidate is to spend all their time in New York? If a Democratic candidate spends more than a day in New York, why is it dumb?
Oh,
New York is primarily Democratic.
Yeah, New York is gonna go blue every single election because New York City is a very strong Democratic city, and the number of people who are gonna vote Democrat in New York is such that we are almost always this state's gonna go Democrat in a presidential election. So
Very
it doesn't
true.
make sense to spend any time or money because there's only a certain number of days between now and election day. You can't be in two places at once. You can't spend money in two places at once. So it makes a lot more sense to identify which are the states which really matter. Who are the people you need to convince? And that's something which data mining can play a huge role in. And the ways in which you can do it is you can just like look at what happened in the last election, see, and one thing which people are data mining over and over is who voted for Obama, who then changed their mind and voted for Trump. Who are those people, and what else was correlated with it? Was race a factor? Was gender a factor? Was views on religion a factor? Like, people don't know what it was. So one of the major things people in the Democratic Party have been doing for 4 years is trying to figure out who voted for Obama but then changed and voted for Trump, and how can we get those people to come back? And so that's the sort of way in which campaigning has been fundamentally changed by computer systems, because now you can get those huge census data bases. You can run major algorithms and cyber mining or data mining operations on this. And so political parties have fundamentally changed how they go about campaigning and who they target. You did.
Just to answer the question, like who voted for Obama but then changed their mind to vote for Trump, it's because like Trump was a self-made billionaire before Obama announced his campaign against John McCain, and at the same time he ran this NBC show called The Celebrity Apprentice. It might be because of that.
But the question is going to be like what? But like people knew who Hillary Clinton was for a long time as well.
Bill Clinton's wife.
Yeah. And did that play a role? With the fact that she was a Clinton, did that change people's views? So if we put somebody else into, like, as the candidate, does it? So one theory is like she was too centrist. She was a very moderate Democrat, and people are thinking maybe they needed a more socialist or more left-wing person. Or they might think maybe it was just that she was a Clinton, and that people have negative views about the Clintons at this point. Or you might wonder, maybe it's because her message didn't resonate with people in the major states that flipped. So the states that flipped were things like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Midwestern states were the ones that flipped. And so you might think, well, how do we get those voters back? What do we have to do to appeal to those people? And that's something where cyber technology and data mining has fundamentally changed. And so for years, people were making generalizations like, if you're a Republican, don't bother campaigning in this particular city because it's vast majority African American, and African American people overwhelmingly vote Democrat. And that was the sort of thing which would be drawn. Now people can go, wait, with the data mining, we can actually find that that's maybe too general. Maybe it's much more specific, like people in certain cities, or there's this group of people, and maybe if they only vote Democrat because they cared about this particular issue. And if we decide to change our views on that issue, maybe people will come over to our party. So do people understand how data mining allows you to identify what voters care about? And in the same way that, like, you know, why do advertising companies data mine? To get information about the consumers. Basically, all a political campaign is a fancy advertisement campaign for, instead of you buying something, you voting for me. That's the only major difference. So the same things that apply with technology in those cases are going to apply here. Mo, you're going to have.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, 'cause I know we're not really going into that in much detail about the political voting system, but at the same time, like if you look at the history though of like the voting system at the time, like there was a lot of times where it was mostly Republic presidential candidates that was being elected, and then so that was playing a factor in terms of data mining. I mean, even though this is not what we're talking about, but like, if we talk about historically, like, and then if you talk about Hillary Clinton, she was running. She had been running for years, like, but she never had reached the type of fan base or political base, I mean, whatever, to reach that platform. But then Obama, who was a young senator at the time, you know, he was gaining popularity at larger scales than Hillary.
Yeah, and I think the big question, and this is what the Democratic Party has been asking, is like, Obama won these states easily and Hillary did not. And the question is it a personal difference? Is it just that Obama was more charismatic? Is it that the United States is still sexist enough that it was hard for a woman to get elected? That's another hypothesis. Another is that the nature of the nation had changed, so that the message which Obama had given 8 years earlier just didn't resonate in the same way as younger people are voting. And like, the fact was Obama got young people to vote, and in a way Hillary did not. And the question is that part of the issue? And so and the thing is, nobody has a clear-cut issue, but the better that a political party can get to answering these questions, the closer they are going, the more information they're going to have about like how to run a good campaign, and the more likely they are to win. Now on the other side, and this is one we've talked about before, what's the other change with technology and campaign running? Money. How has money been changed in terms of, how has cyber technology and campaign fundraising changed?
You can now like donate to campaigns online.
Yeah, it is much, much easier to donate online. And also because of this, how easy it is to donate online, you can donate a lot smaller amounts and still make it worth your time. Like if you used to have to write a check, write it out, send it, send the postage, everything, go to the post office. If you're a busy person who's working 3 jobs and you don't have more than like $5 you can spare to give to a campaign, the odds are you weren't going to do it. Nowadays, it takes 30 seconds to go online and like Venmo or PayPal or credit card a candidate. And it can be, because it only takes 30 seconds, you're going to be far more likely to give those $5 than back when you had to write a check.
Yeah, but you know it's crazy. I think that's like what the issue is too, because like think about how difficult fundraising really was. Like you would have to really figure out who you was donating to. Like you'd have to really like find a place to leave some donation somewhere. Like like because like when you're in church you leave a donation, you know you're leaving it in the pot. Like but like besides that, like
yeah, and that's another thing, is back in the day, it used to be really hard to even find how to give money to a campaign. Like say it was 1988 and I really wanted to, no, 1990? Whichever year Bill Clinton was elected over the first Bush. I guess that would have been 92. How would you have known how to get him money? You would have had to like research it. His campaign would have had to like advertise it. You'd have to physically walk into a campaign. Nowadays, if I hear something about, I don't know, I hear that AOC just endorsed Bernie, and I really want to endorse Bernie like her, so I can go online, Google search, donate to Bernie Sanders campaign. In 3 minutes, I can send that money. So it's just fundamentally shifted. But on the other side of it, what did we say about big tech companies in general and their relationship with money? How much is Amazon worth?
a gajillion.
$1 trillion.
Trillion.
How much is Apple worth?
3 gajillion.
Yeah, we're talking so much money because we said these big tech companies are so strong and powerful now that they have so much money. So the other side of it is, on the one side, small players can donate more money than ever before, and somebody like Bernie Sanders can get enough people to donate him $20 that he can lead the campaign funding. But on the flip side, the other side of it is we are reaching a point, because of like tech-generated wealth, that certain companies are able to put millions and millions and millions of dollars into candidates. And so, for instance, there was recently an election for a community organizer in Seattle. What big company is headquartered in Seattle? Microsoft, Amazon. In this case, there were 2 candidates running, one of whom was more centrist and business friendly, willing to give tax cuts and things for Amazon. The other was more of a socialist whose views were more like harsh taxes for the wealthy and more benefits for the poor. And who did Amazon want to win?
For the tax.
Yeah, the one who was going to give tax breaks to Amazon. So what did they do? They poured something like $100 million into that person's campaign. It didn't end up helping. They ended up losing. But they lost much, much closer than the election before, when they had their, the socialist candidate had won in a landslide the election before. This time, they won by a very small margin, and part of it was because Google poured their money into the candidate that was going to support their views. So that's another way in which it's changed. Is it's not just that you can, if you're a small person, you can give more money, but on the flip side, if you are a big tech company and you have so much money, you have now so much more money than before to donate to candidates. What are some other ways in which it's changed? What are some other ways in which our democracy has changed because of cyber technology?
I think just general knowledge about the campaign, like itself, like besides being involved in it, like and like voting and fundraising, like knowing about like campaigns and elections and debates and stuff is easier because of technology.
So what did we talk about last class? What was the big two-word, or what was the big thing we said about learning about things in the modern world? And learning about viewpoints both that you agree with and you don't agree with. What did we say the relationship is? You did?
Government.
So, in which sense do you mean government?
Like last class, we have talked about political science, like democracy,
But before,
monarchy.
so you're right on this, but I worded the question poorly. Which were we talking about before we talked about that? What was their main takeaway from the first? Oh, it's okay. That was my fault. But what did we talk about the first half of class? Pardon?
Communication?
Yeah, communication and communities. And we said that what is changing about communities? Well, it's now that we are able to talk to people at so much greater distance that if we want to find out things about other views, we can. But what was the flip side of that? What?
Privacy and IP address.
Say like, if the, let's say the white supremacy is a good example because it's a bad side also and they can communicate.
Yeah.
far right.
So on the one hand, you can communicate to people with views other than your own and
White
learn a
supremacy
lot.
is bad?
But on the flip side, if you only want to find other people with views like yours, like white supremacist views, you don't have to talk to anybody outside of that group. So this ties in with democracy. What is the relevance of this? Well, one way is it's much easier to find information in general. So if you want to know exactly what a candidate stands for, what can you do now? Google it. And not only is it the sort of thing where you can find out what the candidate has said on the record about this sort of thing, you can also find videotapes of what they were saying 10 years ago. Or you can find an interview that they had that was with some tiny news story, or some tiny news outlet. Or you can see how they treated a child who came to give them a hug at a campaign. Like, these things are there. So if you want to get information about candidates and what they stand for, and including things like what they voted for. So if a candidate comes out and says, I really, really care about the environment, I really want to make sure that we go green as a nation. But then what can you do now? It used to be that you used to have to take them at their word. Now you can go online, find out what they voted for, and find out, oh, they're saying they care about the environment, but they voted tax breaks for natural gas companies and lowered the environmental regulations on gas production. And you go, oh, they're saying something, but their actions say something else. And it's much easier now to find what those actions are. Or you hear people talking about candidates all the time. Like all the people in the Democratic primaries, you might not know who all of them are, and you might want to learn more. Now you can find that out really easily. So that's the one thing. You get a Google, and you can get, you get access to Google, and you can get all this information. But on the flip side, what was that white supremacist side of things? Who is it, where do most Americans today get their news from?
Facebook?
Facebook. Facebook is the #1 way we Americans get our news. Specifically, Facebook linking to other things.
Exactly.
So what's the worry here? What's the problem with this? Why is it that Facebook is coming into the crosshairs for so many of these candidates? No.
So it's kind of like how we talked about in the beginning of class about the formation of government. Like they had monarchies and they had oligarchies and they had democracies. Like if Facebook is the source of this news, they become, in a sense, like the monarch or the oligarch
Yeah.
of news.
Yeah. It's now not, they're a monopoly on our information. So the key to having a democracy is who decides in a democracy?
Us.
Everybody decides. Everyone has to make a decision. In a monarchy or an autocracy, how many people really need to know what's going on to make a good decision? The one person. In a democracy, you need everybody to understand what's going on. And for that to work, you need everybody to get access to information. And the issue is, if all the information is coming from one source, the worry is that that one source can affect how people get their information, and specifically how the information they get to them then in turn affects their views on things like politics. So, what is the major worry with Facebook? Why is it that people are so worried about Facebook being the news provider? What is it about Facebook that makes it different from something like, you know, the New York Times or CNN or even Fox News? Like, regardless of what views you have on any of those news organizations, they have a different approach to it than Facebook does.
Instead of being a public platform, they're going to become a publisher, and